Good afternoon, everybody. It's Suzanne Tyson here from Higher Ed Points. I believe we are live with the session on ways to pay for school. Thank you so much for attending. This is going to be a rapid fire because I have 30 minutes to cover something that I would normally take about an hour to cover. And the format of this session is one that you can use with your students and your parents if you're having guidance counselor evenings or afternoons with students. And it's all about the different ways that they can find funds to pay for their post-secondary education. So when I come out to a school, sometimes it's during the day and it's a student, sometimes it's at night with the parents and students. At this time of year for the grade 11s and 12s, it's all about the decisions. And there's a lot of stress in the atmosphere because a lot of students don't know what they want to do. So the way that I start the session is to talk about all the different things in the next 12 or 24 months that they're going to be thinking about and the decisions they'll have to make about where and how and what they study. But the number one thing everybody in each room shares is how are they going to pull the funds together. And the last time I checked the stats, only about 4% of students in Canada, whether that's international or domestic, have enough funding to pay for school 100% by themselves. So this session's all about all the different sources of funding out there to help those students pay. You're at a School Finder event, so I assume that you do know about the schoolfinder.com website. But what I love about it, and when I talk to students in these sessions about it, if it's not a School Finder event, is narrowing down those decisions can be a lot easier if students start with, if they don't know what they want to study, but they know what they like in the courses they're taking now, start with the program that they want to study. So what I did on the School Finder website is put in accounting, and then you can see on the left-hand side, you've got university or college, graduate school, etc., undergrad, then degree or diploma type, and then the way they want to study, part-time, online, co-op, and where they want to study. And when you click on any of those filters on the left-hand side and you've put in accounting, you'll get a list of the schools where you can study that. And the beautiful thing about the School Finder site is you've got a bachelor's option for Brock for accounting, an honors option. You also have co-op, and when you click on that, it takes you to the page where the student can find that information. So sometimes it's easier to take the temperature down a little bit and show them there are tons of options. And when they look at the programs at the school site, they'll also see what the application criteria are, the deadline, and what the program costs. So not to freak anybody out in the room, but generally when I show a slide with the fact that tuition is just the tip of the iceberg and all of the years of working on student funding, the one thing that always surprised students in course when they were actually in first, second, or third year is how expensive it is every single time they're on campus, and especially if they're living away from home. And they say after the first year that tuition is the easy thing to budget for. It's all of the ancillary things and the times that they're opening their wallet for other things. And the objective is to get through school. A lot of students think that they can't go if there's going to be any debt. Debt isn't necessarily bad if it's creating a benefit for your future. And the average Canadian student will come out with about $27,000 of debt for the ones that do take on debt. So what I love talking about is how to decrease, close that gap in funding as much as possible before those students get onto campus. And I used to work at a scholarship matching firm, and I've spent lots of time working with the Scholarships Canada folks. And what I did when I started going out to talk about scholarships was students would say, okay, well, my marks aren't that great, or my parents' income is too high for me to get government funding. What else is out there? So the first step is to figure out what the expenses for that student will be, and then to put together a list of all of the different sources of funding available to that student. Talking about it, what I did was I created this worksheet, which actually, when I'm presenting in person, will give to the attendees, and the students and the parents will fill out this information. And you can go back to the School Finder site, click over to the website of the school, and find the tuition fee, the residence or city rent fees, and then the meal plan fees as well. The other thing that students and parents sometimes forget to put in is you're going to be buying your own clothes if you need a winter jacket or new boots when you're away at school. laundry detergent. That always surprises a lot of students. So just cataloging those things so students know that those are things that they'll have to pay for if they're not living at home. And then on the other side, a lot of students don't know whether their parents have put away money for them in an RESP. And the parents themselves might not know how to get that money out of the RESP to fund. So actually just having a place that lists all of the different types of funding available is great. And beyond the RESP and personal savings and support from family, this is where it's great to have this conversation with people in person. And there's a link at the bottom. I'm happy to provide the presentation to anybody who'd like it. My email is in the presentation, and you can reach out to the School Finder folks. They can send it to you as well. But there's a fillable version of this worksheet at this link, which is in the presentation. The other thing I'd like to offer up today is I actually, because all of this knowledge was just sitting in my head a year ago, I decided I'm going to put together a workbook on ways to pay for school. And it actually lives now in physical format. And I just quickly grabbed the cover of it and put the tables of contents in here. And what it's meant to do is to be a step-by-step guide for students to walk through. More than happy to send a free PDF version of the entire book out to you to take a look at. And you can use this as a tool either in the grade 10, the careers class that you're using on campus, or just as the worksheet itself. So feel free to send me an email at the email listed there. In terms of the sources of funding that are out there, I'm sure a lot of guidance counselors are going to be needing to cover this with students. And I think the most common confusion comes when students don't know what the different types of funding are out there. So there's the merit-based awards, which are the ones that reward students for something that they've done. So high marks, community service, athletics, something that sets them apart from the other students out there. And right now, you probably have students that are applying for the Lauren and the TD Scholarship and the Schulich Leaders Award, but there are thousands and thousands of other ones. And you can go to scholarshipscanada.com, and the students themselves can put in their profile and get a list of awards and merit-based awards, actually all awards that are appropriate for them. Then there's financial need-based awards. And those, so OSAP would be a common example of those, or any of the provincial student loan programs. There are lots of awards for students that have participated in Pathways to Education or Boys and Girls Clubs, and every single campus that the student will go to will have need-based awards and bursaries and scholarships for access. So those two types of awards, it's 10 to 20% for each of those categories that students are eligible for. And then I coined the term the middle 60, because 60% of students will say, I can't qualify for those things. What else is out there? So Higher Ed Points is the company that I founded. I'll talk about that in a minute. That everybody can use Higher Ed Points. Scholarships Canada is a site, hopefully, that you're already there and you're having your students go and register at. The picture in the middle is Shelley Clayton. She's the financial aid officer at the University of New Brunswick. And the financial aid officers are your student's best friend on campus when it comes to finding money, because Shelley Clayton and her colleagues in financial aid can find money for every type of student. But the only thing she says is there's lots of money here, but you can't apply for an award that you don't know exists. So encourage your students to actually go and check out the financial aid office if they go on a campus tour, or to at least go on the website and find out where the link is and what's available to them. There's lots of other money as well from employers. A lot of parents are working at companies who may have scholarships for the students of their employees. And they don't do a great job, a lot of these employers, of making their employees aware that these are available. So have someone reach out to the HR department or the people in culture department to see if there are scholarships. Working, probably 10 years ago, it became common for more than half of students to have to work while they were at school. So I'll talk about where to find jobs. And then there's private sources of funding like lines of credit and loans, etc. So Higher Ed Points, just very quickly, we've helped offset $3 million worth of tuition and student loan repayments since launch. And the way that it works is students can use anybody's loyalty points to help them pay for their tuition at Higher Ed Points participating institutions. So if you or anyone in your family or your next door neighbor or your boss collects a lot of TD rewards points, Aeroplan miles or Aeroplan points, American Express, or CIBC Aventura points. Instead of redeeming those points for a trip or a toaster, we say, you can redeem them for tuition or a student loan program. So you can visit Higher Ed Points to find out about that. It's cash that goes into the student or loan account at the school. If there's anybody on the call that has their own student loans, you can use this too to repay your OSAP or Canada student loans. In terms of scholarships out there, and there might be some scholarship sessions that you'll be able to sit in on during this event. But there's lots of myths out there. And I find that when I talk to guidance counselors in settings like at the OSCA, at the School Counselors Association, a lot of people believe that there's a scholarship season because the big ones are available right now. But there really isn't a scholarship season. And it's at sites like Scholarships Canada, if the student goes and registers and puts in a monthly reminder to go and check what awards are available, they'll find there's a constantly renewing list of awards that they can apply for in a given month. Not all scholarships require high marks or need the student to be in financial need. There's a tall person's scholarship out there. All you have to be is, I think it's 6'1" for a male and 5'10" for a female. There's lots of hockey scholarships. There's water polo scholarships as well. And those can be found at Scholarships Canada. And then there are also awards. Students think, because most of what they hear about awards is in grade 12 when they're about to head off to college or university for the first time, that's where the awards end. That's not the case. University of Toronto has 8,000 different awards for students that are at University of Toronto, and those are available at each stage of a student's educational journey. I just put some examples in here of scholarships that are relatively unusual. So the Horatio Alger Canadian Scholarships, there's 16 $5,000 awards, and the deadline for that is annually in March. And the link, if you click on the Horatio Alger link, you'll go over to the website and see the criteria, and there's an application link there that you can click on. Campus financial aid officers, again, I can't stress strongly enough how important it is to visit the website. There are awards, if your students are applying to universities now, there are some awards that you need to apply for before you're even granted admission to the university. Queen's University, for example, their big awards, those applications are open now, and some of them will be granted before the student even gets their acceptance letter at the school. So make sure the students are checking those websites to see what's available. The other thing that changed in the last 5 years or so is that campuses will have what they call a one application. And so students once a year can put their name in, put the courses they're studying and other information required by that school, and they'll automatically be considered for awards that come up. And there's lots of times where companies say, I want to give an award to an agricultural student, and that money will just pop into the database, and those students will be automatically eligible for those. And it's a nice little windfall. There's one student from University of New Brunswick who said he got five $500 awards that he didn't even apply for by just being sure he was registered. The other example of that is at Ryerson. A few years ago, they hadn't awarded all of the endowed scholarships, which meant that, and they had to give them out contractually, they had to give them. So they sent an email out to everybody who was registered and said, what are you struggling to pay for the most? And the most common request was for TTC passes. So I believe there were 800 students that had their TTC pass paid for with the excess funds. The Opterus Rebel with a Cause Award. This is the third year it's been out. It'll be out again in the spring. And this one's really interesting because in age 16 to 28, and there are 2 awards for $10,000. And this one's totally different. She doesn't care. Janet Hawkins, the founder, doesn't care about marks. She wants somebody who breaks the rules. So if you're a woman and you want to go back to school on this call, you're a counselor, you want to go back to school, you can apply for this thing. And I would recommend, even if you're not 28 still, if you're older than 28, go for it. If you're a rebel, looking for people that are going to do things that are going to change the world. And some really interesting people have won this award. It's different than the typical award. She even has a question: what's something that you're never asked for in a scholarship application? And the stuff that comes out of that question is really what has determined some of the winners in the past. The Khan Academy Breakthrough Junior Challenge, this amazing woman, Miriam, I believe she was from Alberta, won a $400,000 US prize. And if you click on the link, it actually shows you what she did. She created this amazing video which is about physics. So I watched it. And anyway, TD. So this one is coming up. You probably have students that are applying for this one. It's due on the 15th. I would say if a student hasn't started this yet, probably not worth the scramble, because look at the requirements for this one. But the thing I love about the TD award is that if you can have a student get everything together, they'll be able to apply for 90% of other awards that are out there. So what TD has done is, again, the mark criteria, the grades criteria is not very high, but they do want the student to write a 600-word essay about community leadership. And it's not about being on the student council and going from, your first year on student council up to being the president of student council. What TD is looking for is people who think differently and are building things from scratch. And you can see the past award winners at the award, but it's a huge scholarship, and it's $70,000. It's pretty much full ride, as they would say in the US. It's over 4 years, and they offer mentorship, and they'll also offer summer internships, but you don't have to work at TD. If you want to work for a charity or for a cause, they'll actually pay your salary, and you can go and work for that cause as well. So I always say if you're going to have your students focus on one thing, if they get all of the requirements done for this one, they can then edit those for all the other things they want to apply for. So the key advice, if you wanted to take one thing away from the presentation for your students on scholarship, is to register at scholarshipscanada.com. There are lots of other sites out there as well, but the reason I like Scholarships Canada is they have the awards that are available from the schools in addition to the independent awards. And because they've been around for the longest in the marketplace, new scholarships always go to Scholarships Canada to get their awards listed there. So if there's one place they should go, it would be here. And then by all means, go in and register at the other places. When the student goes in, if you haven't done this yet with them, and you as guidance counselors can register for any of your students, or the parent can, or the student themselves can, create a master list of the awards appropriate for that profile. And the most important thing is to take their time filling out that profile as they're going through, because it will create something that's curated specifically for that student's circumstances. So languages and heritage and family situation, any medical conditions they might have. There's awards out there for diabetic students. And then calendarize the deadlines and give themselves lots of time to get the requirements together. The reason I said don't apply for the TD award is there's reference letters that are required, which are often really hard to get in short time frames. And because there'll be a list of about 130 awards for the average grade 12 graduating student, prioritize the list based on things like, oh, I could apply for that. That's easy for me to apply for. Apply for those, and if you have time, apply for the rest. Read all of the details. So what the committee is looking to reward, because you can tailor your answer based on what they're really looking to reward. And I've been an adjudicator on the Opterus Award now for 3 years, and you can tell the people that really understand Janet Hawkins, and it was the awards for her mother and her sister who have both passed away in their memory, and the students that actually talked about the things that were important to those two women are the ones that stand out a lot. And then go back and revisit the sites as well. There is an article I wrote. There's a link there that will take you over to the article on tips for winning those awards. The other thing that's often confusing to students and parents, and it feels super overwhelming because there's no simple place to go for information on this. So I'll give you this, and you can send students and families here. The Canada.ca website is the very best place to find information on student loans that are available and grants. Then again, the Campus Financial Aid Office on campus, those financial aid officers, there's someone who's dedicated to be a liaison between the student loan program and the student. So if the student has any questions once they do get onto campus, they can go to their financial aid office and talk to somebody about their application. There were some resources during COVID that were made available to students. The most up-to-date information when I looked at the site is there were changes in the 2022 budget related to student aid. And what they're trying to do on the federal portion of the loan is take away any interest charges and then make more funding available. Again, for the adults who are watching this presentation, they're now actually allowing you to get OSAP in Ontario for micro-credentials. So it's opening up the possibility of taking that as well. And then there's student work placements at the second link on this page. So the basics, if you wanted to try and describe to your students what the basics are of the grant and loan program in Canada, the grant portion that the government will give you does not have to be repaid. So that's free money. And the only way you can get that grant is by applying for the loan, but you do not have to take the loan. The loan is the portion that has to be repaid. And if they don't change it for Ontario, there'll still be interest in the provinces on the provincial part of that loan, but they're thinking of taking away the federal interest on that as well. But you don't pay interest on the government grants and loans until 6 months after you graduate. The loans are funded in part by the Canadian federal government and then in part by the provinces. In these provinces, there's one application that the student will or family will use to apply for both parts of the funding. And in these provinces, you have to actually apply separately to the federal portion and separately to the provincial portion. And then you're repaying those loans independently as well. The territories in Quebec operate their own student aid programs, and the Yukon offers just the federal student loan program. So if you don't want to talk about any of that, the only thing is the grant versus the loan. And I would say the reason a lot of students say they don't apply for it is they don't want to take the loan. But as I say, you don't have to take the loan. One of the smartest, financially savviest students that I ever met with said she would take the loan portion, put it in a bank account that wasn't accessible online. And if she needed the money, it was there, collecting interest if she didn't need it. And if she did use it, what she would do is then get a job and replace the money in the loan fund so that when she graduated, which she did, she'd be able to just go and repay the loan portion. But it was there as a safety net, and she didn't need to take a line of credit to be able to fund emergencies if they came up. So this link will take you to the financial assistance calculator, and the student can put in their information. And again, you can do this with the student if you like. And when they hit submit, it should calculate the amount of grant and loan that they could potentially get. You have to start within your home province to apply. So on the website, the canada.ca website, there'll be links to each of the different provinces. And this is just a screen grab of OSAP. They had new material that they handed out at the university fair a little while ago. But when you go onto the website, you'll still see basically the same information that gives you information about how to apply, what happens after you apply, etc. But the thing that's critical about this is there are humans that are making decisions about these OSAP applications. Yes, there's the calculator out there, but if there's a student who has a family circumstance that has changed, and with COVID happening, everybody has some circumstance that has changed, you can actually go and ask for a funding review, and you'll see that in the bottom right-hand corner here. So if the amount of funding isn't going to be enough, and if that student isn't going to be able to complete, you can actually go and request a funding review. And a lot of times that's managed by that campus financial aid office. If you have questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll try and get to them at the end. And if we can't get to the questions, I've asked Tess from School Finder to send them over, and I'll give replies and she can get them out to everybody as well. The other reason it's important to encourage your students to apply for student loans, pardon me, is that once those students get on campus, that information is used in Ontario. There's a student access guarantee. And that is, pardon me, no student should be denied access because of funding. And when they apply, if they're in a more expensive program, there'll be more money given to them. Pardon me. Tess, maybe you want to take a question while I clear my throat.
Sure. The first question we have is, how would you recommend students boost their eligibility or resume for scholarship applications?
Okay, that's a great question. And I'm just going to finish LinkedIn and then I'll get to that question. Get your students to get themselves a LinkedIn profile now, because this is actually the best way when they're in school, getting co-op programs, getting internships, and then getting a job when they get out there. And I'll give more information if anybody wants this on the whole process with LinkedIn. But if you have that opportunity to sit with the student and get themselves set up on LinkedIn, it's honestly the best place for them to learn about paths and areas of study that might be of interest, because real people are talking about their jobs in those industries. And then one resource is eLoft Careers as well. So I'll just leave this additional resources page up as I talk about boosting chances. And I think the first bit of recommendation is take a look at what the criteria is for any of the awards the student wants to apply for. And the problem, it's a double-edged sword, because the problem with, say, the TD Canada Trust Scholarship is a lot of students who've done the things that TD is looking for don't think that they're special, because they just think it's normal for them to create a sister school in perhaps an area that needs clothing or computers and go about creating that program. So I think as guidance counselors, the thing that you can do to help students is say, hey, you're the kind of person that this scholarship program is looking for, and help them with that application. Because a lot of times, students are very modest about their accomplishments and achievements because they don't have a lot of life experience to see that the stuff that they're doing does help them stand out. The other thing I would say is have them write the application as though the person's sitting across from them and they're having a conversation. Because a lot of the awards, the TD award gets thousands and thousands of applications, and they have lots of people who are reading them. But I can tell you from having read hundreds of applications myself, when I feel like I can actually see the person that's writing this thing, understand their experience, and want to have a conversation with that person, that helps them get to the top of the pile. The other thing is, if they ask for a reference letter, try and get the person writing the reference to make it personalized to the individual, not just to whom it may concern, but to TD Canada Community Leadership Application Committee. I have known name of student for X number of days, and name of student is exceptional in these ways, so that the person reading that reference letter knows that that student has really made an impact on the person writing the reference. That's something important. And if you can get original letters, that is great. And also, one thing I would say is when they're getting that reference letter, have that person write a generic one as well, not addressed to TD Canada Trust or TD Community Leadership Scholarship, because they can reuse that for other applications as well. And then the other thing that's super important is to read the criteria that they're looking for, because it will say in the T's and C's, we're looking for students who they come from this community and can speak this many languages and want to do this in their future. And then you can calibrate the answers based on those questions. Hopefully that's helpful. We have 2 minutes left. So how about, is there another question, Tess?
Yeah, we got a couple. What is better for a student, a loan or a student line of credit?
That's a question for, I would say, look up Kelly Keene, Keehn, I believe. And the other person that does a lot on this is Rob Carrick. And there's another one, but it depends on whether the student can actually get either, because they'll have to have a co-signer. And the difference between the loan and the line of credit is, with the line of credit, you use it as you need it and you pay interest just on what you've taken. With the loan, if you take a lump sum, you're likely going to be paying interest on that lump sum as you go along. The one thing I didn't have time for was international student scholarships. I have a whole different section for international students, and there are a couple of companies out there that help them. There's one called Empower that helps international students with loans for their education, lower interest than the banks. And then there's Windmill Micro Lending that also is another one for international students, and they focus on the student loans. But also talk to your bank, go physically into a bank and talk to the bank manager, and they'll have lots of advice.
Perfect. We got a few more. How can students set themselves apart from other scholarship applicants?
I think personality is something that really stands out for me when I'm reading applications, and passion. let your passion show. Imagine that you're talking to, tell the student, imagine you're talking to an adult in your life who's really interested in you and what you've done and where you want to go, and they're your cheerleader, and talk to them about the goals that you have for the future. So if it's a scholarship that that's talking about community leadership, for example, like the TD one, answer the questions based on the impact that it has, but why you got into that. So a great example, I was doing a session one day and a student came up and I said, what kind of volunteering have you done? She goes, oh, I've been, I worked at the Ottawa hospital for the last 5 years and la la. And I was thinking, oh, that's interesting, volunteering at the hospital. Then we started to chat a bit more. And she said, yes, I'm working in the research lab for heart murmurs because I have a heart murmur. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And then she said, and I want to go to school in health sciences because I want to do research on improving this thing. So that 5 minutes that I spent with her talking about that was so much more fruitful to me than her just saying she volunteered at the hospital. So what scholarship providers want to do is they want to find the reasons why and the impact that the student has and where they want to go. They want to give money to students that have an idea of how they want to apply their past to the future and help them along. The other thing is if there's financial need, I'm of two minds about having the scholarships that ask people to talk about their financial need. But a lot of times when there are two really great candidates and one would be able to go and achieve their academic dreams because they have the financial funding, and there's a student that wouldn't otherwise be able to go, it comes down to those decisions at the end of the day. So I would say find a way that's respectful of the individual to be able to say, and without the funding, I probably wouldn't be able to do X, Y, Z. I need to have to stay at home and go to a school that I really don't want to go to, etc. So little things like that, I think, are things that have stood out for me. But not like, don't have any typos. Have someone proofread it. Make sure what you're trying to say, what the student's trying to say, is coming across on the paper as well. Hopefully that helps.
Perfect. All right, we've got 2 questions left. We should have just enough time to go through them.
Okay.
What do you recommend for people that don't have a lot of community leadership or volunteer experience?
So lots of awards don't require that, or it's a check mark, and if they have to do the required amount, that's fine. But in the Scholarships Canada database, you'll find lots of awards that don't require a lot of community leadership. As I mentioned, they're the sports awards. There's tons for academic prowess. There was one award, I forget the title of it now, but it was the Nice Award, someone who was really nice. There are journalism awards. So if you look, really just set aside the time to filter through the whole list of awards that you get. And then just Google awards for student awards or scholarship awards for XYZ. So if you're, hurling is a sport that I just recently found out about. I think there are awards out there for curling, hurling, hockey, etc. as well.
Awesome. That's great advice. And then the final question we have is, when should a student start looking for scholarships for their education?
There's no time that's too early. If the students in the keeners who have come to the fairs that I've been an exhibitor at, sometimes they come as early as grade 8. When the scholarships are available, it's generally in grade 12, and a lot of students find it really, really stressful when they're trying to figure out where they want to apply, also keeping their marks up. So I would say grade 11 is a really great time because they're closer to making those decisions. But take a look for the grade 11s, grade 10s and 11s at the big awards and look at what they're trying to reward students for, so that they can start thinking about those things as they're volunteering. The TD and the Lauren, though, won't look at students that have just started volunteering in grade 12. They do want to see that longevity and that commitment to the causes that they're working for. But if you can start cataloging the things that are available early enough, then you'll have time to get all of the criteria together. And then it's really, the hardest part is to pull together an essay in short order. So have them write a big essay for one of the big awards now, and then help them edit that down for other awards that are out there. So I would say, if I had to pick a year, I'd say grade 11 is a great time to start, but don't think it's too late if you're in grade 12 or even in first year now. campus financial aid offices have lots of awards that can be applied for.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for all of the information you've provided.
Thank you so much for having me, and feel free to reach out if you'd like the presentation or you want a copy of the PDF of the Ways to Pay book.
All right. Thank you, Suzanne. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, take care.